Hey gang, Joyce with Skipping Calves Farms here. Um, we're on the outside row of my garden. It's early-ish in the morning, so I apologize for the shadows. I wanted to highlight a couple of things and mention something I'm just going to try. The first is the highlight. If you can, and I'll try and do this as best I can. You can see this plant here. That's oregano. I took it off of that big bush that is over here late last fall and planted just little tiny sprigs, and they didn't really seem to do anything, but I did kind of carefully weed eat around them as best I could. And this spring they are growing up, and so I lost a couple of them, but I've got this one here in the corner. I've got this one right here. I've got another one right there, and another one right there. And then I have a bit of a gap in the middle of that shadow. And then towards the end of the shadow, I've got another one. So that's worked out actually really fairly well. Let me give you another bird's eye view from the other end, because the idea was, if you've got a plant like this oregano that I planted right here at the corner of my tomatoes, it creates a really strong smell, and it confuses the pests. That's the idea with that. So as I just walk the end, here's another patch of oregano that popped back up from last year. Here's one that did good last year, and look how big it is this year. So now we're at the other end of the garden. See, this is the last row at this end. So let me show you what we've got in terms of oregano here. I planted pretty much the same spacing. We got one right here, we got one right here, we've got one right there, and 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 then that big patch at the other end. The idea is to try and, over time, what does nature do? Nature seeks the easiest way. You know, it's what they say, water seeks its own level. Everything seeks its own level. Well, guess what? If I've got rabbits and voles and moles and stuff around, and they keep running into oregano and they don't like it, and they can't tell that these are bell peppers, because all they can get to is oregano, they'll just turn around and go to grass. You know, they're not going to want to fight the fence and the grass and the oregano to maybe get to a pepper or whatever. I'm just making that up. But for example's sake. The other thing that you will see is, you see these plants right here along this edge. I've been trying to, over the course of the winter and spring, get rid of the grass. So what is all of this? Most of these plants that outline this walkway are plantain. Plantain is going to be my mustard greens on my dinner table. Let me show you another example. Now this walkway is between the tomatoes and the okra, and then I just put up, this was that raised bed, but I just added these cattle panels. When I put in the cattle panels, I did not get rid of the plantain. Okay, now there's still a little bit of grass in there, But you can see the plantain's all gone to seed. It's all growing up on this side of the cattle panels. It's going to provide a little bit of shade. Is it going to compete with moisture with my sweet taters on the other side of the cattle panel over here? I don't think so. Not so much. Why? Because as I harvest those, the roots are going to slough off. When those roots slough off, guess what? That carbon becomes humus in the soil. And what does carbon do? It holds 15 times its weight in water. You increase the carbon percentage in your land by 1%, you can hold up to 25,000 gallons of additional water per percent of carbon. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the top 12 inches, but I'm not sure. So that's kind of what I've got going on here and here. You can also see along this path. Now this path is a little bit disjointed because I've got the tater patch and I had dug down and piled up. So basically from the edge of the tater patch down, it's got a lot of grass and I'm still working with that. But look here by the tomatoes. Yeah, there's some grass here. But from here out, it's mostly plantain. And it's getting that way over here. And what I'm doing this morning, my chore this morning, is there's a lot of grass here. Well, I determined I wanted to weed eat it from this way, from the edge of the plastic down here by the behind the tater patch. I wanted to weed eat this way to throw the cuttings that way. But I ran into several big bunches of red clover. They'd gotten started, they self-seeded. Red clover is a good thing to have. I just don't want to have it there. So I decided while I was cutting, as I'm working my way this way, as I approach a big red clover bunch. Now this bunch has not gone to seed quite as early. So there are not very many black seed head tops in this last bunch. But in the first two bunches, there were a bunch of black-headed seeds. So when I got to those, I just came and I cut them, and then I did something really sophisticated. I threw them over the fence. Why? There's no red clover in my fodder willow orchard. This is not an area that gets grazed a lot by my sheep at this time. Eventually it will. Eventually I'd like to have more clover in here. And so I threw a handful over there. And now if you look at the seed, see if we can zoom in a little bit more. Yeah, there's a little bit of pink in some of those heads, but most of those heads are dark. That means they're going to have viable seed. So, we'll just see. I have a couple of red clover plants next year in that space. Success. It took me less time to do that than it's taken me to do this video. So, that's where we're at, gang. With that, I will wish you blessings for the day, and whatever you do, just keep thinking, keep experimenting, and keep chasing your dreams.